It's Sports Talk New York with your hosts, Mark Rosenman and AJ Carter. Sports Talk New York is sponsored in part by Cardboard Memories, Clearview, Long Island, the law firm of Decolator, Cohen, and DePrisco, the Phoenix Tube Company, PIMS Incorporated, fueling brand performance for 30 years, Prince Associates for all your insurance needs, and Soho Table Hockey. Here are your hosts, Mark and AJ.
And good Sunday evening to you. Mark Roseman, AJ Carter with you this Sunday evening. You know what? I shouldn't say good Sunday evening because if you are a New York sports fan, it's been quite a while since it's been a good Sunday evening when it comes to football season
or anything. I mean, I did not have the world's greatest week, and I still had a better week than the Mets, the Yankees, and the Jets
and the Giants. Yeah, brutal week. But we're going to talk other sports as well tonight, so we're glad you're with us.
43-man Squamish?
No, that's not on the table for tonight.
Aww.
We are glad that you're with us on the 365 Sportscast Network or on sportstalknewyorklive.com or watching us on Facebook or YouTube Live. We appreciate that you taking the time to tune in. And if you are a regular listener, you know that it's time now for the Major League Baseball Report with John Coppinger, sponsored by our friends at Cardboard Memories, which is one of Long Island's most reputable memorabilia stores for over 29 years. The owner of Cardboard Memories, Scott Stamell, is known for his knowledge and savvy of authentic autographs. He's been featured on HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel. Cardboard Memories possesses the honesty and integrity one would want and need from a memorabilia source. Cardboard Memories is always buying collections, large and small. Let Cardboard Memories run your next charity fundraising auction. Call them to find out how they can help your organization at no cost. Cardboard Memories is located at 6401 Jericho Turnpike, Comac, New York. Visit them on the web at cardboardmemories.com or follow them on Facebook or Instagram. John, so what I want to really start with tonight is, I was really, first of all, this past 2 weeks, documentaries on the Mets left and right. The one about the 9/11 game, which was technically the 9/21 game, and then the 30 for 30, Once Upon a Time in Queens. And while I'm watching it, first, other than the fact that I was really intrigued that I want to see The Warriors, the movie, again, but I looked at that team and I said, you know what? This particular Met team could have the making of that type of team with that swagger, with some of the core, but there'd have to be some added pieces.
So who's the one key piece you would add, like Gary Carter was added?
Well, that's why I want to ask you. Well, first the thing is I want to ask you, John, out of the guys that are on this current team, which of those guys on this team do you think would have been, a perfect fit for that 86 team?
Well, that's hard to say because I don't want to come off as being insulting to anybody on the current team because they're all good ball players, but it's two different cultures. So like you talk about Pete Alonso and Marcus Stroman, for example. Those guys are bulldogs on the field, and I think they would have fit in well with the 86 Mets on the field. Would they have fit in with the culture? Would they? And I don't mean that as a bad thing, but these are guys that come out. If Pete Alonso were to go to a post-game news conference in '86 and say, "Smile, we got this," I could see Keith Hernandez pulling him aside and say, "What are you talking about?" I don't know if those are. They had different upbringings now. I don't know if they would be a little bit of a culture shock. I think.
You raise an interesting point. Talk about Keith Hernandez as being the captain of that team who called people aside. Who is the best candidate on this Mets team to take that role? Is it Francisco Lindor? Is it Alonso? And who is it? Who has that gravitas, that knowledge, and the respect in the clubhouse to actually do that?
Well, people have been talking about Lindor being the guy that has shown leadership on the field. Being involved in the conferences on the mound. So I think he would probably be that natural fit. And he's one of the guys I think could have played on that 86 team. When I look at the guys now who could have fit in on the field and with the culture of the 86 team, I look at guys that I see that are more as concerned with results than they are with process. And the three guys that I look at in that respect are Lindor, Taijuan Walker, and James McCann. Those are guys that when they talk to the media, they talk in results. They talk in terms of results, not just in process. They understand that process without results doesn't mean anything. And I would also put Jacob deGrom on this list because I think he could play in any era at any time. He's the wild card. But in terms of being that leader now, I think it's Lindor. And I think certainly he'd be an offensive upgrade over Rafael Santana. No offense to Rafael Santana. but I think he could have fit in very well with the 86 team.
I would add 2 more to that. Well, 3 more. I would throw in Noah Syndergaard if he's healthy, because I think, he's got that, we're better than anyone mentality.
And it's easy to forget about Syndergaard because he's hurt. But
exactly.
And you have Javi Baez.
Javi Baez for sure, because he will do anything to win. And then one other guy who I think, is overlooked because he's just such a nice guy, but I think all he wants to do is win is Brandon Nimmo also. I think Nimmo might be one of the most underrated players on the New York Mets.
He was
I don't know if Nimmo could have fit into Cooters.
No, there's no question. But I think there needs to be, listen, I love the fact that Davey Johnson put it out there that we need to dominate. And obviously it's hard for any new Met manager, because I believe there will be a new Met manager coming off of, how many years of sub 500 ball or not being at the, on the cusp of being in first place, obviously coming off the 85 year, the Mets were right there and, they felt that it was their time. But, the Ray Knight getting into it with Eric Davis, that is, and I think that's one of the reasons why Met fans are booing this team, because there isn't that fighting spirit. There isn't.
The one who comes close to it is Javi Baez,
right?
And the more I see him play, while I have problems with his plate discipline, the more I like him and see what he brings to the table.
Thank you.
And that's
finally,
I still have problems with his plate discipline, but I see you want him on the team for all the other things.
I want him more than Michael Conforto. That's all I can say.
So while we have another minute left, John, let's turn to the wheels falling off the bus in the Bronx. What do you make of this? They lost, 11-1 today. They have not had a good week. Can you stick a fork in them, or can they still rally?
I think they could still rally. Listen, any team that wins 15 games in a row has something in them. But what makes it tough is that they've got 2 AL East rivals, with Toronto being extremely hot on their tails,
and Boston,
and Boston also. And the Yankees have had trouble with teams that have been in the division. A little better against Boston now, but they seem to be falling apart. Gary Sanchez doesn't seem to be in favor with Boone anymore. Right. And as I said before, it's they've had issues in the rotation, and they don't really have a reliever that they can trust every time they throw him out there.
And it's gotten late. And Toronto. That lineup, I wouldn't, bet against that lineup in any short series.
And also the three pitchers they have, Robbie Ray is a Cy Young candidate now. You got Berrios and Ryu behind them. That's a good 3 in the playoffs. It's better than anything the Yankees have.
And
Absolutely. It's interesting because, you take a look at the 2 managers, and I think finally maybe Boone will stop playing Sanchez, but he kept on going back to Sanchez, even though, the backup was playing better. And I still don't get why Rojas, it's how many games in a row the offense isn't producing, and he keeps on having Conforto batting higher than Baez. And, Conforto keeps on stranding runners, and he keeps on trying out the same lineup game in, game out.
I think he's hoping that Conforto will see better pitches and then move him down to the lineup, but it's not
working.
doing anything.
It's not working.
Well, the conversation we're going to have about who stays and who goes at the end of the season is going to be very interesting.
Absolutely. All right, John, thanks so much. John Coppinger, heard here each and every week with the Cardboard Memories Baseball Report. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side, one of my favorite players from the 70s, Thomas Henderson, joins us, so keep it tuned right here.
Do you own a business? When is the last time you actually had a visit from or even spoke with your insurance representative? Did your current insurance agency sell to another firm or maybe merge, leaving you without the attention you deserve? Prince Associates is a provider of commercial insurance nationwide and represents some of the finest insurance carriers in the industry. Prince Associates has been representing commercial clients since 1965, and we continue to grow and offer our personal services in a competitive and ever-changing market. If you want back the insurance relationship you deserve, reach out to us, 516-822-6550. That's area code 516-822-6550. And ask for Leith or Craig, or find us on the web at www.princeins.com.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York this Sunday night. Joining us now is the man who was the Dallas Cowboys drafted out of Little Langston University in Oklahoma with the 18th pick in the first round of the 1975 NFL Draft. 2 short years later, he started all 14 games for the Cowboys, evolved into a star linebacker, delivering highlight reel hits, creating turnovers, 3 interceptions, and helping the Cowboys win Super Bowl 12, 27-10 over the Denver Broncos. His post-football career is just as impressive, as after hitting rock bottom when his addiction to cocaine led him to a path that ended with him being sentenced to prison in June of 1984. There he began the steps to becoming clean and sober, which he has now been for 37 years. He's the author of 2 books, Out of Control, Confessions of an NFL Casualty, and In Control, The Rebirth of an NFL Legend. He is a 2-time winner of the Texas State Lottery. It is a pleasure to welcome a member of the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl 12 championship team, one of my favorite players from the mid-'70s, number 56 in your program, Thomas Henderson. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
It's a huge thrill for me because, back in the day, you were it, man.
Mark has been talking about this all week. This is AJ Thomas. He's looking forward to this. We're looking forward to a great time with you.
Yeah. So it's interesting because you started your football career at the old Anderson High in Austin, Texas, the same school where Dick Night Train Lane got his start. The school has historic significance. It was Austin's only public African-American high school. It was constructed in response to a growing African-American population and a national and local threat to segregated schools. What do you remember about your time at Anderson?
Well, I went there 1 year. I went, the normal course of junior high to high school. And so I lived in that community. So I spent my sophomore year at Anderson High School in Austin, Texas. I was a tailback on the junior varsity. And so my football attributes were later, like my senior year in high school.
Well, so you moved to Oklahoma City during your junior year, but Oklahoma had a rule that out-of-state kids would not be eligible to play the first year of transfer. So what was that first year where you're starting to come into your own as a football player, yet you have to sit out and you can't play football?
Well, I worked at the post office and played basketball my junior year. And, I thought the sit out was not right. I'd left a real tough situation, a very, very poor family, family who seldom had toilet paper. So when I went to Oklahoma, I had a grandmother, which really, really wasn't my grandmother, but she was wonderful, that took me in, and I just started over in Oklahoma. I was a street kid. I was a hustling kid, played pool for money, played pool with grown-ups at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for quarters or dollars, and they were drunk and I wasn't, and so it was pretty slim pickings.
So when you think of high school football, you immediately think of Texas, Friday Night Lights and all of that. From what you were able to see as a high school student, how different was the level of high school football in Oklahoma compared to Texas?
I think Oklahoma was pretty equal. With the University of Oklahoma there in Norman, which is only 30 miles from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma State, University of Tulsa. I literally had never heard of Langston University before I knew who they were. I mean, it was literally that summer after graduation, where I turned 18 years old in 1971. And I was 1A for the Vietnam draft. And so I'm about to get drafted. And before that summer, that spring, my guidance counselor called me to her office and she apologized. She says, "I'm so sorry. I didn't catch this. You made an F in geometry in Austin your sophomore year. You need that geometry to finish high school." That little mishap kept me out of Vietnam.
Wow. Oh, wow.
That's a great story.
That is a great story.
I had to go to summer school in order to finish high school. So I went from 1A to 1S, which was school.
School. Yeah. Unbelievable. So you had a very special relationship with the head coach there, Donald Earl Burns Sr., who tragically died as a victim of the Oklahoma City bombing, where he worked as a construction analyst for the Department of Housing and Urban Development. His widow actually called upon you to deliver his eulogy. What did you learn from your time under Coach Burns about football as well as life?
Well, the first thing I learned is I was not a quarterback. I just told him, he said, what did you play in Austin? I said, quarterback. He says, hey, give me a ball. And they threw him a ball. He gave me the ball. He said, throw the ball. I threw a duck. He says, you're no quarterback. You're going to play defensive end. And that's where it started.
Wow. So in your senior year, you grew from 5'10" to 6'2". You got up to 200 pounds back then. You start to dominate. You're named to the all-city team. You ended up at the historic Langston University. What are some of the other schools that recruited you, and why was Langston your final choice to go?
Well, the true story is Marshall lost their whole football team in 1970.
Right. Yeah.
And so I wrote this begging letter. I'm a football player in Oklahoma City. I made all city. I'm 6'2", 210. And I got a Dear John back from Marshall. And so, you have to realize, if I can't make a team that nobody's on, it was a pretty difficult time for me. And at the last minute, a friend of mine, just a line came out of his mouth. He said, why don't you go up to Langston? And I go, oh, and so it's late. It's mid-August, and I hitch a ride to Langston, and the coach up there said, "Oh, I know who you are. Barry Switzer talked to me about you, and so you were a hell of a prospect, and he didn't think you had the grades to come to Oklahoma, but that wasn't true." And so Barry Switzer, by the way, every time I see him, he says, I missed you. So I went to Langston on a Tuesday. I was in Frankfort, Kentucky that Saturday, starting at defensive end. The starting defensive end broke his ankle on Wednesday. And I kept his job for 4 years.
That's incredible. It's so strange that you mentioned Barry, because 1975, OU won the national championship. Your Langston team, I think, went something like 1-9, but yet you're the first player from Oklahoma to be taken in that NFL draft.
Yes.
So shame on Barry. But what do you remember about draft day? And more importantly, you mentioned the woman who you referred to as your grandmother. That's Nettie Mae Higgins. It was very important to her after the draft, when you were flying to Dallas, for her to accompany you to the airport. So much, in fact, that she basically was bedridden for a while, but she had a ruptured sciatic nerve. And she fought through the pain of that to accompany you to the airport. So what do you remember about draft day and about that day, heading to the airport?
Well, I had to get from Langston to Oklahoma City to her house, first of all. I was asleep, and my roommate woke me up and said, Cowboys on the phone. So you have to realize the NFL draft was not on television. It was not on radio. It was the NFL looking at college football players. And so I get a phone call. It was Gil Brandt. I called him back because I had been out for a run. And he says, Thomas Henderson, you're a Dallas Cowboy. And I didn't know, that I'd been picked the 18th pick or whatever it was. And he says, how long would it take you to get to the airport? I said, well, I'm about 40 miles from the airport, a couple of hours. And he said, okay, well, there's a ticket waiting for you. And so I hung up the phone and I ran out in the pasture. I just was running as fast as I could. And it was just a release. I had really worked hard, dogged as it was, to be a great football player. Now, keep in mind, I worked offshore in the Gulf of Mexico the summers of 72 and 73. And I went out there sort of olive oil and came out of there Popeye.
Okay.
And so a lot of the strength and a lot of me taking on tackles and guards and fullbacks all leads back to my career as a roughneck. And so that's the basis of that story.
Yeah, I remember how such a physical presence you were. In 1975, you joined the Cowboys, who had 9 straight winning seasons, 8 playoffs in the last 9 years, a Super Bowl win. What's that first training camp like, surrounded by some of the biggest names in the NFL and that winning tradition that comes with being a Dallas Cowboy?
Well, I mean, back in those days, the Dallas Cowboys, and all teams would have over 100 tryouts. You had your draft choices, and then just a dorm full of free agents, and so for 2 weeks you're competing against free agents and all rookies, mind you, but so you don't know who anybody is for the first 2 weeks. And then here comes these guys, Ralph Neely and John Fitzgerald and Roger Staubach and, Blaine Nye and John Nyland and Billy Joe Dupree and Drew Pearson and Harvey Martin and Too Tall Jones. It's just, it's overwhelming when the boys, come to training. But by the time they got there, I had already won Tom Landry's doubts. Now, he picked me because Red Hickey and Tank Younger, legendary Tank Younger from Grambling University, they watched me play. I ran a 4.4 and a Capaster with Converses on, no traction.
Right.
And so the Rams were going to take me 25th. But even with all that said, Tom Landry still had questions about, coming from a small school. We didn't have a great year my senior year. But on one day in training camp, when the veterans were in, I'm a rookie. So Tom Landry took a moment, and it was the only moment of my entire 5 years with him. He says, "Thomas, come here." He says, "Listen, this is goal line." And I'm working my offense here. And he put me in the up back position at a linebacker. He said, "The play goes that way, you go through that hole." He said, "If it goes that other way, you loop around." I said, "Okay." And so the film is rolling. It's the veterans against, rookies, basically. And they started to play, and I almost killed Robert Newhouse in the hole. And I ran back to Landry. This is one of those moments, like a kid, and I kind of I said, "Sir, like that?" He shook his head. He goes, "Yeah, just like that." I had knocked Robert Newhouse's helmet off.
So this was actually pretty much a watershed year for the Cowboys, preparing to move on from that group of players to the next group with younger players. And you're one of 12 Cowboys rookies that year who were part of the rebuild. And that group would include 6 future Pro Bowlers, including yourself. And you nicknamed yourself the Dirty Dozen. How did that nickname come about?
Well, when you're a rookie with the Cowboys, you have to shave. You have to come to training camp shaven. And I broke the rule. And so And so we all, had these beards. And then, Landry made them cut them all off. I went to a dermatologist and he said I had pseudo-full follicles or something and that I couldn't shave. And so when the guys could grow their beards back, and, boy, it was ugly. Some guys' beards weren't full. And so we all looked, the 12 of us, about 10 of the 12 had these scruffy beards. And I think it might have been Frank Luxa, longtime columnist for the Times Herald, that coined that phrase, the dirty dozen, because we looked a mess.
So 2 years after your rookie year, you're named the starting strong side linebacker over Randy White, who was moved to defensive tackle. You posted 53 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1 sack, and 2 fumble recoveries, as well as returning an interception for a 79-yard touchdown against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Cowboys make it back to the Super Bowl. You lead the team with 7 tackles in Super Bowl 12. Looking back on that season and the way you performed in the Super Bowl, what is it that stands out most to you?
Well, the team. What stands out most is Tony Dorsett, Roger Staubach, Drew Pearson, Billy Joe Dupree, just the whole team. Because when you win a championship, it's barely about you. It's about an effort of, those starting 22 guys that make it happen Sunday after Sunday and sometimes on Monday, that gets a team to the Super Bowl.
So in 1977, after pick 6 against Tampa Bay, you spiked the ball over the goalpost crossbar, essentially creating the touchdown celebration. So when you look back at all of the crazy end zone dances and other celebrations today, how do you feel about what you did? And how do you feel about the NFL's effort to control celebrations today?
Well, I mean, you can't go overboard with it, but, I may have been, besides Joe Namath, I may have been the first African-American guy to market himself as an individual. I mean, I was a Dallas Cowboy, but I knew that my career as a football player, could have lasted 10 years maximum, the way I played, because I was crazy. I loved collisions. And so I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to do something else beyond football. So that, if you think about the 10 years, if you can play 10, some guys play 15. If some guys play, Brady is off the charts. But I thought I had 10 years and I better let everybody know who I am. And the Cowboys really didn't like that. And I didn't understand why they had such a problem with it, but some did.
So it's funny you mentioned that, because I think that is, back in that era was when things started to change, whether it was because of Muhammad Ali, Joe Namath you mentioned in other sports, maybe Derek Sanderson in hockey. But I vividly remember, and we didn't have the media and we didn't have all the games that we do today, but I always remembered, Billy White Shoes Johnson, and you and Mean Joe Green. And it was just the personalities. It was when the NFL started gaining personalities.
Of course, Mean Joe Green, remember, for the Coke commercial.
Right. Also,
that's the one.
But it's also interesting, too, because over the years, Coach Landry's reputation has certainly tarnished a bit. Some of the books, such as Herb Adderley's book, paint him as borderline racist. You mentioned about the beard. You had a few run-ins with Coach Landry, ranging from the very first time you met him, with the beard, as well as him not starting you because you missed a practice because of the flu. How tough was it for him to play for him, given, you have that over-the-top personality and the Cowboys were everything but that? And have you ever wondered, had you played maybe for the Oakland Raiders, a team that was just full of those type of personalities, or the Steelers, if your career might have been different?
I think it would have, because, Landry complimented me once in my entire career. All those big plays you saw and all that, the only game he ever complimented me in front of the team, because that's where he did it. He'd say Drew had a great game, or Roger really, or Newhouse, or Too Tall, or Harvey Martin, or Randy White. He would really go. He even said, he prefaced his compliment to me. It was, let's see, what year was that? Oh, it was 78. And we were playing the New England Patriots, and they had a guy named Russ Francis. And Skip Bayless had written a column about how great Russ Francis was. And he ended the column by saying, if you don't think he's great, watch him drag Hollywood around Texas Stadium Sunday. Well, the first play of the game, I hit Russ Francis in the chin with my helmet. And I owned him for four quarters. He was dodging. I mean, he was looking for a bomb every play. So I misused him. I made about 8 tackles for loss, and just played and everybody knew that Skip Bayless had made that comment. Well, Coach Landry comes into the Monday meeting after that game, and he says this, and it was like, what? He says, well, it's kind of hard to, congratulate Thomas on a great game. And everybody snickered. Everybody laughed. Everybody laughed. And then Landry said he played great. Best game he's ever played for the Dallas Cowboys. And then he said, Thomas Henderson is a pro. That was it. That was the only compliment that I got from him in my 5 years.
And then things come to that boiling point with Coach Landry in 79 during the 12th game against the Redskins. Cowboys are being beaten 34-20, national television. You're seen on camera displaying handkerchiefs with the Cowboys team logo. When interviewed about it, you said that teammate Preston Pearson had asked you to show off the handkerchiefs which Pearson was marketing as a favor. Coach Landry was so angered by the episode that after threatening to waive you, he instead deactivated you for the remainder of the season by placing you on the injured reserve list. Did you ever talk directly with Coach Landry about that? And what is then your initial reaction when you're traded away prior to the following season to the 49ers?
Well, let me tell you what happened there. He put me on waivers. Well, we had a meeting. And during the meeting, I MF'd him, cussed him, told him to do himself. And so the meeting could have went better, I think.
You think?
and I was full of cocaine. I powdered up for this meeting because when I got the call, his secretary said, Coach wants to see you. And in my 5 years, he never wanted to see me. Never said a damn word to me. But all of a sudden he wants to see me, and I go, well, I'll see him at the practice. She said, no, he wants to see you in his office. I said, oh, okay. So I loaded up with cocaine, and that meeting could have went so much different. But yes, Preston Pearson, had asked me to, advertise his towel, and I did it. And I did it, while we were losing, and me and Jerry Tubbs got into a verbal confrontation. But I still never told anybody that it was for Preston. And so, bad timing for a good cause.
So you mentioned that before you met Coach Landry, you cocained up. How bad was your addiction at that point in your career?
It was bad. I wouldn't call it. It was a bad habit at that point. Hadn't become what I would call an addiction. It was just a bad habit. But yes, and Dallas, Texas in the 70s, it was a lot of cocaine. And I had my shares of it, and I wish I hadn't.
So your playing career ends a few years later in a preseason game when you suffered a neck injury. What do you remember about that play? Did you know immediately that meant the end of your playing days?
Yeah, the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, Crudip. I think he drowned some years later. Yeah, it was a throwaway play. The pile was falling toward me, and I punished people. So I just stuck my head in there and broke my neck. And it wasn't spectacular. I walked off the field, and I think I finished the game. I don't remember. But that next morning, I wake up on a college campus, and I can't move. I can't get out of bed. But it's more pain than lack of feeling. And they called an ambulance. They took me down the stairs in a stretcher, and had me bolted down. And after a CAT scan, it was C1, cervical vertebrae number 1. I should be in a wheelchair. Lucky, lottery lucky that I don't lose my legs.
So just 4 years after your football career has ended, 7 years after your Super Bowl win, at the age of 31, you're sentenced to prison. What are some of the thoughts that are going through your head during the trial and sentencing and that first night in a cell?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you asked this question because my daughter one time asked me, because she was getting teased at school, and she says, "What did you do?" And she ran upstairs, and I didn't say a word, and I haven't said much about it because it will sound like an excuse, and I'm not really good with excuses. I don't remember. With Richard Pryor, I started drinking 151 rum because it was the only beverage around when I was smoking crack, and we were lighting the torch with the 151 rum and smoking the crack, and lighting the torch with the 151 rum and smoking the crack. And at the end of it, because you always ran out, I was not a Colombian drug dealer. I ran out, and so I started drinking 151 rum. This was something Richard Pryor had turned me on to. He said it'll bring you down, but it'll also black you out, because it's flammable, and it's like, it's heavy, and so I have to be honest with you. I never had talked about this, but 82, I don't remember. 83, most of it, I don't remember. Because when I went to get a couple of ounces or 3 or 4 ounces of cocaine, I would also buy large quantities of 151 rum and cotton swabs and ear swabs to light my cocaine, and drink the 151 rum is what Richard Pryor poured over his head and lit a match.
Yeah.
And he doesn't remember doing that. So I don't know. I don't remember 82.
Interesting, and maybe that's a good thing. So what? So I assume this is something you would remember. What do you think the most important thing you learned about yourself during your time in prison, and what did Dr. Joseph Perch mean to your recovery?
Well, the acknowledgement that I was an alcoholic. That's a simplifying, and a drug addict and a liar and a cheat and all that. But just that I was an alcoholic. Kind of hard to say you're an alcoholic, but until it brings, you joy and happiness and sobriety and love and family and friends and good living, and that's what sobriety has brought to me. Dr. Joe Persh, he passed away a couple of months ago, and I went out for his celebration. He sat with me in his office. He's the big time psychiatrist, and he said, "Thomas Henderson, you're an alcoholic." And I didn't like that at first. But what is it now? What is it, September? So for 37 years and 10 months, I haven't had a drink or a drug. And I'm proud to say Thomas Henderson is a recovering alcoholic.
It's actually 13,830 days exactly.
You started writing your first book while in prison, using telephone privileges to call in your notes. What made you decide to start writing the book, and how did it morph from being a tell-all about the NFL to being a tell about me book?
Well, it was my story. And even while writing that story, my co-writer would, say, what happened that night, or what happened in Houston, what happened in San Francisco when you were playing for Bill Walsh. I couldn't remember stuff. I was teammates with O.J. Simpson in 1980 with the San Francisco 49ers. Joe Montana was a rookie in 1980. And I couldn't find my house. I bought a condo in Redwood City, but I couldn't find that house. I bought a house in Houston because I played that end of the Oilers went to the playoffs and we lost to the Raiders. I don't remember where that house is. I don't remember what happened to that furniture. And so being in and out of consciousness. I tell you what I did one time. I went to a strip club on the way home one night, and I drank 4 beers, and I got drunk. And, I drove home, went to that same place 10 days later. I walked in, I said, I'll have a gin and tonic. They said, we don't serve alcohol. I said, what do you mean? I got drunk over here the other night. He said, that's near beer.
Wow. It's unbelievable. So, it's interesting because years later in 1997, well into your sobriety, you wrote a remarkable open letter to the readers of the Dallas Morning News in which you apologized for your past behavior and everything that surrounded your arrest. 3 years after that letter, you'd be in the news again as on the way home one night in 2000, you stopped at a drugstore to pick up antibiotics, cough medicine, and left with $100 in lottery tickets. The next day, you learned that you won $28 million in the Texas State Lottery. And it's interesting because you celebrated by purchasing a sausage and egg biscuit, powdered donuts, and a pint of milk at a 7-Eleven. So the question is, and this will be the only time I'm going to refer to this name because I know that you were very adamant about that Thomas Hollywood Henderson died in 1983. But what would have that celebration look like had you still been Thomas Hollywood Henderson?
Yeah, I have this picture of in the mountains of Colombia, Medellin, with 55-gallon drums of cocaine, pure cocaine, and 55-gallon drums of 151 rum, and these tiki torches.
Well, as I mentioned, today marks your 13,830th day of sobriety. You travel the world sharing your story. You have become a community philanthropist in your hometown. You're the founder and chairman of ESYSSO. You built and restored a stadium complete with an 8-lane track, all for the recreational enjoyment of the East Austin youth. You're also the president and owner of Thomas Henderson Films, an educational video distribution company that provides the incarcerated community with information on prevention, recovery, and sobriety. You've devoted your post-prison life to the prevention of substance and alcohol abuse by helping the community understand that sobriety is an option. So we urge people to go out to your website, number one, and I want to thank you so much for your time tonight. I've always was impressed by what you did on the field, but it pales in comparison what you've been able to do off the field and turning your life around. And we're just grateful that you joined us tonight.
Well, it was a well-studied interview. I appreciate that. You know the facts. And to anybody who hears this, who has thought about quitting drinking, who has had a few blackouts where you don't remember what you did the night before, that you can be clean and sober one day at a time.
Awesome. The one and only Super Bowl champion and, more important, life champion, Thomas Henderson. Thanks so much, Thomas. Be well.
Hey, you know what? I just came from the grocery store and I looked up at my clock when the phone rang and it was 6:10.
It's been a while.
I barely made it. I want to tell you, I just walked in the house from the grocery store. After 6:10, my phone ring, ring.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm sure you probably picked up an egg and biscuit and sausage sandwich.
Donut.
Did you wait a minute? More importantly,
Did you
Did you buy a lottery
ticket? Did you buy a lottery ticket? That's what we want to know.
I did.
All right. So we expect to hear from you tomorrow, and we want part of the winnings.
That's right. Be here. Y'all call me back. Okay?
You got it. Be good, Thomas Henderson. And we'll take a quick break. On the other side, Russ Cohn with the NHL Report next.
The Phoenix Tube Company Incorporated is among the country's leading manufacturers of structural ornamental stainless steel tubing, rectangles, squares, and processed flat bars. The company takes pride in its everyday commitment to quality and customer service. The philosophy of the company has been and continues to be to support the growth of the stainless tube market through distribution and service centers throughout the country. Ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing is used for a wide variety of aesthetic and mechanical products where superior finish and corrosion resistance are required. Some products manufactured include tubing for mirror bracket arms, boat rails and ladders, washroom grab bars, swimming pool rail products, medical equipment, automotive step bars and trimming, as well as structural framing for food processing equipment. For a quote or for more information on how the Phoenix Tube Company can meet your ornamental and structural stainless steel tubing needs, visit them on the web at phoenixtube.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-526-2124.
And welcome back to Sports Talk New York. Mark Roseman, AJ Carter this Sunday evening. If you just tuned in, you missed a fascinating 30 minutes with Thomas Henderson. Just some really, brutally honest stories and just amazing. It really is. But now it's time for the NHL Report with Russ Cohn, sponsored by our friends over at Soho Table Hockey.
What's table hockey?
There you go, AJ. Some of us have grown up with rod hockey or bubble hockey or even air hockey tables. Soho Table Hockey has embraced the nostalgia of those old tabletop
You forgot
games.
knock hockey.
Yeah, we didn't really forget it. Designed a whole new board for the future, handcrafted with designer wood, state-of-the-art playing surface, unbendable rods, energy-absorbing walls. This is a table hockey game that tabletop players age 8 to AJ's age can enjoy. Even better, the exceptional quality and design allows the game to stand up to the intensity of tournaments, which is why Soho Table Hockey is the #1 choice of championship players throughout North America. Visit SohoTableHockey.com to learn more. Start your order on a custom game. You can choose your wood, a centerized logo, and even the team matchups. Go ahead, drop the puck. You love Soho Table Hockey so much you won't be able to stop playing. And if you set them up as the Flyers and Rangers rookies, Russ Cohn would be watching you because right now it is 3-2 in the third period. Nils Lundqvist just scored the go-ahead goal after the Rangers lost yesterday 6-3. Russ, you were there. Tell us what you've noticed, what stood out so far these two games back-to-back.
Yeah, I mean, well, yesterday's game was really hard to make out. The stream was not great. I'm going to discount that. As far as today's game, I mean, Nils Lundqvist, probably the best player on the ice. He really he's scorching down the ice. They left him wide open on that goal, but he's been playing really well, engaged, hard to get the puck from. Really good in corners. He's played well. Zach Jones has played well. Braden Schneider's played well. They have a lot of defense there. Pajaniemi looks really good too. I mean, if they were just able to set him up a little more on the power play, he'd look good. And Morgan Barron looks really good on the penalty kill, on faceoffs in front of the net. I would put him at 4C this year. I have no qualms about it. I think he could handle it.
Interesting. So, all right. So, does that mean that Rooney's job with the Rangers in jeopardy, or where do they go? I mean, who is the roster casualty if Barron makes it? That's number one. Number two, Hajiniemi also is playing well, and the other thing is, what's with Zach? Where does he fit into their scheme, or what can they get for him in a trade?
No, I think Zach will get sent down and let him start in Hartford. Hajiniemi, same thing. He just came from Liga. I'm not sure who the 4C casualty would be because they lost Howden, right? So I think there'll just be a competition for it, but I could be wrong. I don't know for sure. But I think Barron's got to be one of the guys they're looking at. But Hajiniemi is not that far away. I think, a full season in the A or something close to that with the shot he has, if you get him with the right players on the power play, he's going to deliver.
All right. And lastly, the New York Islanders. It's a great story. I don't believe there's really any downside in it. And the best part of it is I put it out there yesterday that it's been 7,554 days since he last scored an Islander goal. So I'm pretty sure when he scores a goal this year for the Islanders, that has to set a record for goals, between goals for a player on a franchise. But what do you make of the Zdeno Chara, signing by the Islanders?
It's interesting. I don't think that was like his first choice, and to say that I want to finish with the Islanders the way I started. I just think it worked out. Like he said, I believe him. I just think it's cool. I would like to see him warm up in the Fish Sticks jersey. That would be awesome. No, everybody wants to see that. Everybody wants to see that. If he does that, it would be unbelievable. It would be a great photo op. Do it in preseason. It would be fantastic. But he'll be a really good guy for that team because with that road trip that they're going to have at the beginning of the year, now to have a guy like Chara in the locker room to help weather that's going to be big.
I think the perfect, promotional night for the Islanders or giveaway is any original Islander fan that has a Zdeno Chara Fish Sticks jersey that can still fit in it. Because think about it. That's how many years ago was that?
Yeah, late 90s.
Late 90s.
So where's yours, Mark?
I never had a fit. You know what? I want to post. There's got to be someone that still has a Zdeno Chara Fish Sticks jersey.
Ask Leaf.
No, I don't think he ever bought into the Zdeno Chara Fish Sticks. But great story. Go and enjoy the rest of the game. How many minutes left are in the 15 minutes, right? Or 10?
Yeah.
10. Yeah. All right. Go enjoy. Russ Cohen out there in Voorhees, New Jersey, watching the Islanders and the Flyers rookie game. It's currently 3-2 in the third period. We'll take a quick break on the other side. We'll round it out with Sunday papers and the NFL report right after this.
If you're a company looking to increase your visibility, to make sure your promotional materials get packaged in the most attractive way and distributed most efficiently, then you need to call in PIMS. Whether you're launching a new product and need to assemble customized influencer packages or looking for a more efficient way to manage your inventory and collateral, PIMS involvement helps maximize the impact of your brand's performance. For more than 30 years, PIMS has been helping companies get their message out to the right people, offering personalized distribution services and full-scale inventory management solutions. PIMS works its magic on 3 continents, backed by 350,000 square feet of warehouse space. If you're looking for experience, PIMS is it. They've shipped more than 13 million packages and elevated more than 8,000 brands. Want to know more? Check them out on the web, PIMSinc.com. That's PIMSinc.com, and read testimonials from their satisfied clients. That's PIMS, the first name in marketing support.
Decolator Cohen & DePrisco, LLP, is pleased to introduce their website, policeofficersrighttosue.com, as an educational and informative site designed to instruct members of the law enforcement community of their civil rights in line-of-duty accidents. Many law enforcement members are not aware of their rights to sue and fail to bring lawsuits within a specific time frame, thereby forfeiting their ability to seek rightful compensation against those parties that cause officers to be injured. PoliceofficersRightToSue.com provides successful past results of line-of-duty lawsuits. These examples range from officers being provided with inadequate equipment, RMP accidents, slip and falls, and station house mishaps. If any law enforcement member has a question regarding a potential lawsuit, they can contact DCD at policeofficersrighttosue.com or at 1-800-901-1LAW. That's policeofficersrighttosue.com or 1-800-901-1LAW. You can read it in the Sunday papers. Read it in the Sunday papers.
Joe Jackson can only mean one thing. Time for AJ's Sunday Papers. What do you got, AJ?
Well, fall starts this week, I think, on Tuesday, and that's the season of apple picking, hay rides, and corn mazes. And if you happen to be out in Darby Creek, Union County, Ohio, you can go to a corn maze that honors a local resident, Jack Nicholas. And it's a corn maze shaped in the pose he had when he won at Muirfield. It's got, let's see how many. It's got under 2 miles of twists and turns, 85 decision points. And what I don't know is what par for the maze is.
It's interesting because I'm looking at the maze. It's, if you were watching this on YouTube Live, it's up there right now. So don't you get a green jacket when you win the Masters?
Yes,
so
people in the Masters.
So because of he's in this green field, he's already got his green jacket.
Right. Well, actually, if you get through this maze, you win a yellow jacket and not one that stings.
Oh, all right. It's time now for the Capco NFL Report with Jay Retro, who's actually watching a fabulous game. A big pick six just happened right now. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Fall is going to be here tomorrow. I think it's this week, right? It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
I just said that. You weren't listening.
Yeah,
Wake up, Mark.
Wait, do you think,
we're almost at the end of the show.
Wait, do you think, what's new? Do you think I ever listened to you? As AJ said, fall is going to be here on Tuesday. It's time to get those windows and doors ready to let that crisp fall air in and those yellow jackets. See, I was listening. Out with a Clearview retractable screen. The Clearview retractable screen comes with a standard with a lifetime warranty and the patent speed reducer, so it will not snap back. You get the luxury of a screen door and a sleek, low-profile design without the hassle of a bulky storm door or sliding screen door. Call 631-440-1100 for a free estimate. That's 631-440-1100, or visit them on the web at clearviewlongisland.com. All right, before we get to the game that you're at, which currently is now 41, of course it's 41. It's Tom Brady, whatever. Right. Well, let's talk about today, the New York Jets. I know a lot of Jet fans are down on this, and yeah, it was a brutal game.
How concerned should we Jet fans be, basically, about Zach Wilson's performance? He looked like a very overmatched rookie.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too upset, guys. This is just one of those situations where, listen, man, Bill Belichick and a lot of people make of all the relationships that he had with Tom Brady, but defensively over the years, man, he's licking his chops when he sees a rookie quarterback.
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't make too much of it. I think Zach Wilson has shown a lot through these first 2 weeks. He's not afraid. He's going to stand in there and he's going to take his lumps. That's what's going to happen when you start a rookie quarterback week one. He's not sitting there watching it on the sidelines and learning what not to do and not making the mistakes on the field. Those are going to happen. So in a year like this for the Jets, you know how many pieces that you need to put around him in the next couple of years to make sure that your team is heading to the playoffs, hopefully in the next 2, 3, 5 years. So these are learning experiences for him right now. So I'm not surprised. That was one I picked it on my show on Friday. Said don't expect much from the Jets in that game.
Listen,
that's kind of a perfect recipe.
Moving on, one of the things that bad teams do is they take bad penalties. So what do you make of the Giant game and the bad penalties that basically cost them the game?
To me, it's very shocking because, you know, Joe Judge, he comes from the pedigree of Nick Saban. He comes from the pedigree of Bill Belichick. And one thing that you see is a lack of discipline. And that's one thing that you can control. You can't control if you don't have talent, if you don't have as much talent as the other team. You know, at times physical mistakes, those are going to happen. Fumbles, you know, maybe you throw an interception here or there. But things like that, the lack of discipline, to me, is just, that's uncalled for. And I tell you what, man, the Giants, to me, look like one of the worst teams in the league. And that's tough to say because there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. And it was just a weird game. Usually in some games they go, well, whoever's got the ball last, they'll win. It seemed like both teams were trying to lose that game on Thursday night. It was tough to watch, man. That game set the NFL back 25 years.
Point on with those both observations. And listen, Jet fans, this is a rebuild with a rookie quarterback, and you played against one of the best secondaries in the league. I don't have a problem with
but their rookie quarterback looked a lot better than ours.
They're a better team. All right, quickly, we got about 30, 40 seconds before we give way to BT Talks Baseball. Real quick, Jay, I mean, should we just pencil it in right now, Pat Mahomes versus Tom Brady? Is that what we're going to see again this year?
Hard to think otherwise, guys. I mean, the Buccaneers defense don't look too good right now. They're winning these two games without really rushing the passer like we've seen in years past. But my goodness, I mean, Antonio Brown really hasn't done much at all today. and Brady's thrown 5 touchdowns. So I'm with you guys. It's going to be nuts.
All right. Jay Retcher out there actually at the game. So we'll speak to him next week. Enjoy. You got BT Talks Baseball, so keep it tuned right here on the 365 Sportscast Network. If you're out and about when you get home, just tell your Alexa, play 365 Sports. See everyone next week, everybody.